Doctor Who Season by Season. Season 10 Review. Season 10 of Doctor Who aired in 1973. It was the fourth season to star Jon Pertwee as the third Doctor and the fourth to be produced and script edited by Barry Letts and Terrance Dicks. It was also the third and final season to star Katie Manning as companion Jo Grant and again saw the return of Nicholas Courtney as the Brigadier along with the other unit characters, again in a semi-regular capacity. As the name suggests, Season 10 was the 10th anniversary season of Doctor Who and the achievement was considered monumental enough for it to be a big event even then, an event that Letts and Dicks decided to commemorate by making use, for the first time, of what was a much requested fan wish even then, to bring all the then Doctors together. The season thus begins with official 10th anniversary story The Three Doctors, a 4-part story written by Bob Baker and Dave Martin. Oh shit, you might think, as well as questioning the logic of giving such a monumental story to those two instead of, say, someone like Bob Holmes. But wait, just this once I come to praise Baker and Martin and not bury them. Yes folks, make no mistake, I fucking love The Three Doctors. It is easily one of my top 10 favorite Jon Pertwee stories and in my all-time top 30, and is easily the best thing Baker and Martin ever wrote for the series. The Three Doctors is the first comic Pertwee. Well, alright, some insist that the Time Monster was trying to be funny, but if so, all I can say is epic fucking fail, and indicates that perhaps there should have been a few more if this is the result. Of course, the story is slightly nobbled by the reality of William Hartnell's illness, making it impossible for him to appear in the story properly other than as an image on the screen, but it's still nice to see him again, and the sheer comic brilliance of Patrick Troughton's anarchic presence more than makes up for it. Troughton steals the show, clearly much to the Pert's irritation as much as the third Doctor's, which just makes it even funnier. Above all, I really like the story too. It's interesting and well conceived, and the fact that what is quite an epic tale mythology-wise is delivered in such an unpretentious, tongue-in-cheek and just plain fun way makes me like it all the more. Compare and contrast the classic series approach to such things to the endless portentousness of New Who. The Gel Guards always come in for much criticism from some fans, namely the ones who don't like this story anyway for some dumb fuck reason, but I've always thought they looked really original and great, so fuck them, as ever. This is one of my favorite stories ever. The next story is Carnival of Monsters. Written by Robert Holmes. This is another comedy story. Just like Buses, you wait fricking years for a comedy in the Pertwee era and then two come along at once, and is perhaps the first time we really see Holmes completely let off the leash and set free to be as imaginative as he wants. And it's great. Carnival is a hoot of a story, as the Doctor and Jo arrive on a sailing ship in the Indian Ocean in the 1920s, only to find something decidedly amiss when a dinosaur attacks the ship and the crew appear to be caught in a time loop. The script is as brilliant as you'd expect. The regulars are on top form. The guest cast, which include future Harry Sullivan companion actor Ian Marter, are stellar, and the production is also pretty damn good, delivering potential embarrassments like the Drashigs with surprisingly effective competency. Another absolute gem. The next story is Frontier in Space, an epic 6-part space opera from writer Malcolm Hulke. Frontier has come in for criticism over the years for padding, but this is another I've always found very enjoyable. The world building is great, and I really like the detour to the moon prison, which, yes, could be dismissed as padding as it's ultimately irrelevant to the main plot, and yet the scenes are just really interesting and deliver a morally ambiguous shade to this future Earth empire that's genuinely rather fascinating and typical of the shades of grey approach of Hulke's writing in general. The Master is back, in what is his final appearance in the form of Roger Delgado, with the actor being sadly killed in a car accident not long after this story was shot. I'm not the biggest fan of the original Master, not least because he was very overused, but this is actually his best appearance since The Mind of Evil way back in Season 8 and one of Delgado's most enjoyable performances. This really highlights how different the first master is to his later incarnations, who are clearly several fruit baskets short of a picnic. This master is wicked but not crazy or sadistic, and he's almost gentlemanly in the way he treats the captured Jo, even if he does still try to take over her mind. You never really feel that he would really hurt Jo, which is interesting when you compare it to, say, Ainley's interaction with Pirine Mark of the Rani, where he's clearly gagging to make her suffer big time. Anyway, I digress. The master this time does perk up the plot at just the right moment, and unlike Colony in Space, he's also actually necessary to the story as the third party who's doing his best to lure Earth and Draconia into war for his own nefarious purposes. It's great to see the Ugrans again, and the Dalek arrival at the end is also a cool twist to lead into the next story. It's only a shame, and this is the only real weakness of Frontier, that the story it leads into is connected to it only very thinly at best and also turns out to be a big disappointment. Planet of the Daleks is that story, and while I know that this story is actually pretty popular in some corners of fandom, I'm afraid I'm rather buggered as to why. Planet is a crushingly boring story that is easily the worst and most disappointing story of the season. Terry Nation is back, after spitting the dummy over the team doing a Dalek story, the first class day of the Daleks, the year before without him, and comes back to prove he's still the best guy to write a Dalek story. Sadly, his 60s magic seems to have deserted him by this point, and all we get is a vague recycling of the original Dalek story, but without any of the atmosphere, tension and genuine magic of that classic. Granted, the garish and ropey as fuck production values don't help, but this still feels like thin, stretched out, desperate stuff. We also get another tedious Jo romance with a wet Thal who isn't quite as clearly playing for the other team as King Piladon was, but not far off either. So boring and a real blight on an otherwise very solid season. Happily, the season bounces back with its finale, the 6-part The Green Death, written by Robert Sloman. Sloman also co-wrote, with Barry Letts under a pseudonym, The Time Monster and the Demons, but happily this is better than either of those. I do think The Green Death is a little bit overrated, and I don't really think it's one of the great all-conquering classics of the era like some do, but it's still pretty good. The maggots are cool. The Jo romance, while rushed, isn't nauseatingly dull. The Brigand unit get plenty of cool things to do, and while the environmental theme is obvious, it's not too preachy, thank goodness. As someone or other once said, people who want to be preached at go to church or watch Star Trek. They do not watch Doctor Who. All in all, season 10 is a pretty fine season. It's a shame that Stephen I Love Classic Who Honest Moffat didn't rewatch this or season 20 to get a look at how to do an anniversary season properly, frankly. All in all, season 10 is easily my favorite Pertwee season outside of season 7, and even with the disappointment of Planet of the Daleks I still give it an A-.